I'm personally really excited about this because I've been an evangelist, a speaker, and engaged in the remote work community for years. And honestly, the conversations in this community are usually really focused on the entrepreneur, the startup, the freelancer, the nomad. And every so often somebody from Intel wanders in or somebody from Automatic wanders in and they're like, well, yeah. But suddenly COVID has opened the conversation in a whole different way. And so now remote work is for everyone. And I am excited to have a conversation about what it means when you have 40,000 or 4 million employees, whatever, and what it means to make that transition. So I'm going to let everybody here introduce themselves with one sentence. And then we're going to roll into a conversation. Why don't you go first?
Perfect. Hi, I'm Bibb. I own a management consulting firm that's focused on identifying and closing gaps in organizations that, well, they struggle with implementing remote work.
Yeah, what Ann isn't saying is that she has been in responsibility positions in huge orgs like Salesforce, I think, among others. And so it's that experience comes all around, right?
Well, that's actually Karen is at Salesforce. I was at Hilton. I was at... yeah, that's okay. She's actually, I think she's backstage. She'll be here in just a second. But I was at Hilton, Continuum, Sutherland, quite a few that have anywhere from, 10,000 to 50,000. There's Karen. She was Salesforce.
Hi, Karen. Oh, Karen, this is perfect. Can you give a one-sentence intro to yourself?
Yes. So I am Vice President of Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce and the author of 2 pandemic bestsellers, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You, and Listen Up, How to Tune into Customers and Turn Down the Noise. So I am all about enabling this world of remote work and the future of work.
Awesome. All right. Charles?
Hey, Charles Kergaravat, Head of International Marketing at Klaxoon. I'm excited about this subject because at Klaxoon, we're transforming how teams work worldwide, and we've created a new visual standard for teamwork.
Cool. Luis?
Hi, everyone. My name is Luis. I've been working remotely now for 19 years, whether it's large corporations, small, medium business, or going myself on my own business. And I currently work around the world of data analytics, helping people understand the data they produce when they collaborate. And by the way, I think I'm the only one who lives in the Canaries, in the south of Gran Canaria. I know Shane as well. Yeah, of course. Yay.
That's right, man. There you go. So I'm in the north, though. We can arm wrestle.
There you go.
All right. So I'm going to lead in with a couple of questions, and then we're just going to have a conversation. And what I'm really wondering is, from Q2, we have a lot of large corporate customers, and all the conversation was like, how do we stay together? How do we hold it together till things go back to normal? And every month that passes, that conversation gets a little weirder. At this point, I'm sort of wondering, like, how long before things go back to normal? Is it 6 months and reboot, or are we looking at a very different world? And if so, what does that mean for large corporations?
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to go back to normal. Well, let me just rephrase that. What was normal is never going to be the new. I mean, like there is never going to be that normal again, right? Which is why I feel like it's so important that large organizations kind of take a step back and look at where they're going, right? Because the entire world was turned upside down 12 months ago. It really was. And all throughout 2020, it's like been this rolling thing. Every day we're turned upside down. This is not news. Like companies did what they needed to do to keep things going. They sent people home. They embraced what they needed to do to keep the basic necessities to get the job done. But it's just chaos. And the thought process was it was going to be 60 days. Shane, to your point, maybe 6 months. But here we are a year down the road. And corporations, they just need to realize this is not going away. It's just not going away. So it's time for large organizations to take a step back, stop being chaotic about remote, be strategic. This is not a race. It's a marathon, and it's a long one.
Well, and I think the inflection point that goes along with that is really a mindset shift, to your point, that says, instead of how do we get through this, it's what can we get from this? How can we examine new ways of working, new ways of attracting diverse talent, new ways of getting to outcomes. But I really think there's a mindset shift there that says, how do we accept the circumstance? How do we adapt? And then how do we accelerate?
What kind of changes are we expecting to see? When you've got Facebook that comes out and says, yeah, we're going to go remote. Don't expect the same salaries. Or Microsoft that comes out and says, we're going full remote, but God, I hate it. As Luis, like, what kind of like basic changes should people start seeing, expect if they're in these companies, or start considering if they're leading them?
Well, I think that the big change is that we all understand now what it is like not working from the office. Before there used to be this hub-spoke relationship of some people working remote, vast majority working from the office. And nowadays, because of the pandemic, 100% of those folks who could work from home, I'm not talking about essential workers who needed to be out there and save our lives and everything else, but everyone else has had a chance to work from home. So everyone knows what it is like. They may have been professionals about it. It may have sucked big time for them, but we all know what it is like. I think that's gonna change. We're talking about mindset shift. That's it. If we ever get back to working from the office, when people tell you, hey, I'm going to work from home today, we will no longer raise our brows saying like, what? No, you cannot work. No, we will say, yeah, sure, no problem. Go and do it.
Right.
That's the point. That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point, that we still keep thinking that working away from the office is about slacking off. Whereas it's about, to me, the biggest shift here is how do we move from thinking of work as a physical space and thinking of work as a mental state. I work whenever, wherever, with whoever to achieve whatever I need to do.
That you just hit something really important there, though, Luis. There's a big difference for some organizations with regard to wherever, whenever. Is it remote? Is it work from anywhere? Is there flexibility? Do I have to be at my desk and logged in and available anytime when my boss needs me? Is it 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? Is it just get the job done and then I'm okay? There's a lot of large corporations have a mindset that needs to be identified based on the organization.
And if I'm
like,
add to this, and it makes total sense, everything you guys have said. I think we've been part of like the largest global experiment for remote work in the history of our world. And what that's led to is for us to rethink a lot of the things that we were doing, especially large organizations, when you're saying, hey, in 5 months, we've done 5 years of digital transformation. And basically, it makes us rethink everything that we've done. And a lot of people are saying, I really like this. I like this flexibility. I like not doing a commute anymore. And organizations say, hey, we were kind of against this before, but people have been pretty productive. And there's a new thing that's set in where we said automatically, hey, this is kind of working for us. But there's been some new things that have crept up, and organizations have to rethink how they work as teams, as they work as individuals. And I think that's where synchronization as a team becomes so important, when you know that our day-to-days have gotten very busy. We're talking about a lot more meetings every day. We're talking about a lot more emails. New words have been created the last few months, Zoom fatigue. So if we could take the time to synchronize as a team, as an organization, to align and give everybody in our team and our organization more time to work asynchronously, we're going to start doing things a lot better. But right now, we're kind of on shaky ground. We've done some good things, but we need to still think about how we're working as teams.
And I'll tell you what, let me just say something here, because we are making a big, huge, massive mistake, which is we're trying to replicate online what was like at the office. So if at the office I had 6, 7, 8 meetings, let me have 8 Zoom meetings. If I had 100 emails a day, let me now have 200 emails a day. Why? Because no one can see me. No one can have an idea of what I'm working, if I'm working or not. That's a huge mistake. I mean, if people are having this sense of digital overload, it's because we are not using imagination enough to go and say, I need to change the way I work. I need to shift from measuring my effectiveness and my productivity from what I look like to the results that I deliver. And
but that's a change in KPI and performance and understanding what success looks like from a workforce perspective and an output and productivity perspective.
Absolutely, which means that, as I'm going to Anne's point as well, is that we have the brilliant opportunity, and I would say unique opportunity, or redesigning what we think of work in the 21st century versus trying to keep going back to the 19th century, right? And that implies, and I'm probably going to say something very blunt in here, but that implies changing literally everything, starting with our own mindset, right? Because what we had before may not necessarily work in the future. Some things may not, but we need to try. And right now, one of the things that I see from a lot of large organizations is a sheer lack of imagination to rethink what will happen from here onwards.
But does that mean digital first?
Yes, that was the digital first. So if you design work, it is that mindset. Because, I mean, you guys are talking about 6 months with the current pandemic. I'm actually a bit more pessimistic, if I may, and I would say 2 more years in the state that we're currently right now. 2 years in internet time is a lot. Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, well, I was going to say, and I mean, it might surprise you to hear this since I'm at a technology company. I would press pause before jumping to the digital transformation, digital first strategy. You know, digital is a tool. And just like a carpenter who only has a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Digital only solves the problems that you have clearly identified, right? So yeah, I think it's about taking a pause to evaluate what are the outcomes you're trying to deliver, and then how do you use your digital tools and strategy to solve for the trust gap, the experience gap, and this asynchronous work gap. And I think that's what we're trying to solve for, which is how do we put the tools in place that enable us to get to those outcomes, perhaps asynchronously, and so that leaders know that their employees are working toward those outcomes. And so employees feel confident their managers see that they're working toward those outcomes.
So being the consultant that actually comes in and does that, I'm going to agree with both of you and say, yes, you're both absolutely 100% correct, because I'm the person that comes in and says, okay, there's a problem here. So let's go ahead and figure out where that gap is, because there is a gap here. We need digital first. We need a solution. We need technology. But where is the problem? And we have to figure out what that solution is. Let's not just jump to it.
Right, but let me say, you're right, but let me say something here, and I'm sorry to be the party blooper. We are late. We are already 20 years too late, because if we start looking into the emergence of all of these social digital tools that we had with enterprise social networking and everything else, that was at the peak of activity around 15 years ago. And vast majority of large organizations decided to ignore it because it was not their thing. And they were coming up with all lots of different excuses about not enough funding, not enough resources, no time. This is for the young generations, not for all farts, whatever. Those were, now we know, those all were excuses. The only reason why we have not jumped into that digital first mindset, and I will also include there becoming more humane in terms of what we do at work, right, has all been motivation. Another is a bug that has motivated us all to think different and do different.
Well, is that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and because we were all in meetings all the time, all day long, and we didn't have time to implement the changes. So it was almost like we needed something like a Klaxoon to help get us.
I am much more optimistic than Luis here, because I think that this has offered an amazing opportunity, because the reality is, people want to work collectively. They want to collaborate well. They want to collaborate on a global scale. But the problem is, this has happened so fast, and we weren't necessarily very good at meetings before. And right now we're doing a lot of things virtually. So we have to think about our leaders, our managers, our CEOs, and our teams and say, hey, we need to also train people to be good at this. We need to give them the tools, but show them how to use them. But I'm super optimistic, because people do want to work as a team. And now they have an opportunity to do it as they've never been able to do it before, on their own time, when they can be more productive.
Well, there's a call there, Charles, for digital competencies. I mean, how many large corporations invest in helping their employees go digital and live digital and do digital in an effective manner, not just perpetuating the cult of busyness? Because if you're going to show me how I can be 8 hours on a Zoom meeting, go away. right?
Well, yes. And I think it's sort of to what end, right? I mean, when you think about this is about how do you reskill people who are leading virtually for the first time. I mean, I think the success or failure of this distributed work environment longer term is going to be that middle management layer. I mean, how do you have a difficult performance conversation at a distance if you haven't done that before? You know, what does that performance evaluation look like? How do you pivot to a new set of strategies? How do you stop work? And so there's a fundamental, right? How do you recognize burnout? I mean, we're expecting that middle layer of management to intercept how that frontline employee is feeling and be equipped to do something about it. At the same time, senior leaders are like, we want you to pivot and go in a different direction with the business strategy. People need core leadership skills retraining in this distributed world where the context is totally different.
And I would say that here what we need to do is a little bit less of management and a bit more of leadership, right? Where we all, do step forward and take a bit more responsibility and accountability of our own personal development in that area, right? Because it's very easy to just, let yourself go, right? And, oh yeah, I'll do my work and then at the end of the day, I still get paid, right? Whereas I think that what we are seeing, and this is one of the things that I'm seeing with a lot of organizations that I work with, is fun enough is how through the use of the various different digital tools, it's helping people rehumanize themselves again. I mean, the amount of times that we have seen now people behaving like people with others, through conversations, through informal exchanges that before did not happen when everything else. And actually, I would suggest, and I would say, which, to go into John's point as well, it's not necessarily that I'm negative. I'm saying, well, I don't want to be a pessimist. It's more like, let's rethink exactly what we want to do, because what we have done so far is not good enough, right?
I mean, let me take that and pivot us, not entirely, but most large companies leverage physical presence and co-located tools to drive culture. Right. Whether it's Google and Apple's dramatic parks, or time together, or pizza dinner, or whatever. Like almost all these team building and connection activities often rely on physical presence. What types of things have you seen large companies doing successfully to drive vibrant cultures at scale? I know how to do it with 50 people. How do you do it with 4,000 in a way that scales and consistent and meaningful?
Salesforce launched a Camp Be Well Together series. And in fact, you can look it up on YouTube. You can Google it. And the idea was, how do we offer some programs at a consistent cadence that offer people tools to be healthy and well? And we've had everyone from high performance athletes taking us through stretching activities so you can do it with everyone in your own home, to leading medical experts sharing information about what's happening and how to keep yourself safe and healthy, to Olympic athletes. I mean, an incredible range of people expressly for the purpose of part of our culture is about wellness and well-being, take care of yourself, then be of service to the world. And we just rethought how to do that and to include our customers and partners and stakeholders and the people we serve in those resources and experiences, because we felt like it was as much about giving people the tools to do their jobs as it was giving people access to tools and resources to keep themselves, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically well.
I have kind of reflection for you guys, and I would love to also hear your thoughts. And Shane, don't worry, I'm not taking your job as a moderator. But it has always baffled me the fact that we keep thinking of corporate culture, something that is trapped between four walls. So that's corporate culture only happens inside of the physical building. I'm going to call the BS of that. That's not corporate culture. That's actually something that someone told you that you needed to believe as the corporate culture. To me, corporate culture is essentially the people, the conversations and the interactions that people have. Why? Because we keep telling employees that they need to bring their true selves to work, right? Authenticity, honesty, openness, transparency, you name it. And yet we tell them, oh, by the way, when you leave the four walls of the office, you no longer have to carry on with our culture. Woo, what? You are the culture. People are the culture of the organization through those conversations that they have, right? So the question that I have is to me, how do we break that notion that culture happens in a physical space versus us, the people?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great point, and we all talk about those spontaneous moments that the office is good at, right? Obviously, the free coffee helps that too. But how do we create those spontaneous moments? And the statistics are not positive right now after the pandemic, right? When people are working full remote. People who had strong ties with each other in the office communicate 40% more now than before. People that did not have strong ties, it's down 10%. So this is about communication, right? Number one. And we need to create these moments where sort of spontaneous communication happens. And those happen, they have to be forced, right? You have to maybe require teams that don't really get to connect that often to intersect. And that can happen virtually as well with boards that are asynchronous, where people can put information and say, hey, your opinion matters. Please participate on this. And this starts from top down. If you create a culture, an organization where inclusiveness and participation is the key to every building block in what you're trying to create, that happens, that kind of builds on itself. Where we need to sort of, give it a nudge is to recreate spontaneous stuff. So that might be an offsite if we stay full remote. That might be just a virtual coffee with people that would never have talked to each other before. But, this stuff isn't that hard. So I think we can all do that.
I also think a lot of those
right, and you have to have some space to solve for that, though, right? You can't get to a spontaneous interaction when there's no room on your calendar to do it. So I think part of that solution is stepping back for a minute to look at everything on your calendar and on your to-do list and ask some really pivotal questions, like, does it have to be me? Does it have to be me right now? And I think in the context of what we're talking about, does it have to be a meeting? I mean, spontaneity can only pop up when there's space for it. And Anne, I think you were going to add something.
Thanks, Karen. So a few things, and I am going to take a step back because I think it goes back to what we started with at the very beginning of this conversation, which is companies have to take a step back and say, what is our why? Where have we been? Where are we going? What is our company culture? What is our values? What is our motivation, right? I love that before this, Sienna Miller said that, in her session, she said that she asks, what is it that you as an organization stand for? Is this organization a people first or a profit first company? And yes, that is a really important distinction. It really is. This pandemic hit everyone. How has it hit employees? For every decision that we as an organization make, it's impacting lives, not just the lives of employees, but the lives of spouses, children, multi-generational families. So when we talk about employee engagement, we talk about burnout with large corporations. It's a huge, dramatic impact. We can talk about spontaneity all day long, but we need to be talking about engagement with purpose. It's so, you can put together an employee engagement calendar. You can put together something like, American Idol, Gran Canaria Idol, games. Yes, you can plan coffees. You can plan all of these things. Have a purposeful relationship with your employees.
Anne, I think to your point, Anne, I think that one of the things that is very interesting from the pandemic, which we don't admit very clearly to everyone out there, especially people working in large organizations, is that the way we're going to react for the next 3 to 5 years, right, is going to be exactly mimicking how we have been treated during these times by organizations. So the way organizations treat their employees, the employees are not going to be stupid, and they're going to say, this is how I'm going to be treated when things are really tough or relatively tough. Gosh, I don't want to work in here. I want to move elsewhere. So to your point about questioning the why and the purpose of the organization, that would be my number one question right now to large corporations. Why do we do the things that we do? Or why do we keep doing the things that we do that we all know don't work because of the digital overload, the employee engagement going, really low or whatever else, or just the mental health or the mental issues that finally organizations are starting to understand that we need to start looking more after the well-being of the employees as opposed to treat them as resources, human resources,
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing. This isn't just an HR. Like I see, is we talk to a lot of big problems. They're like, wow, HR has their hands full.
Right.
And they do. Don't get me wrong. But I really want to encourage, there's a lot of questions coming from the chat, which is like, I miss those moments in between. Like, you know, those moments of connection, the coffee. And I know a lot of large corporations who are trying to solve this top down, but I think you can also solve this bottom up. I know so many orgs that have culture committees who empower these groups with budgets, with time, with guidelines and suggestions and ideas so that they can drive all kinds of, like, I know a crew where he makes the effort to order a pizza for every person on the team, coordinates it so it arrives at the same time. They're in different time zones. It's a project. So they can have lunch together because that's how he believes team bonds.
And there are apps, there are companies that can make this happen for you very easily now.
Yes.
Well, not now, just the last 15 years. I mean, and I mentioned on the chat the answer, enterprise social networking. The main narrative that was used throughout all of these years was to use ESNs or enterprise social networking platforms as the new virtual water cooler, where you introduce a concept which is facilitated serendipity, where you provoke conversations by having conversations. And this goes diametrically opposite to the exact mistake that we're doing now of thinking that I need to be on all of the meetings, I need to be on all of the emails, I need to be synchronous and real time as much as I can. Well, offline is perhaps even more effective. Why? Because you own the time.
Well, and along the lines of that ownership, right? I mean, we're kind of talking about distributed teams require distributed ownership. And what a remarkable leadership opportunity. What a remarkable career defining moment if you are the one who looks around your organization and says, what's missing is some spontaneity. Right. I'll go create it. I'll put an idea out there. I mean, the great thing about this time is because we're all living this together and it's a reset, every idea is potentially valid and worth trying. So when you see those gaps, when you see something you miss about your previous work environment, you're probably not alone. And how could you lead and differentiate by stepping forward and saying, I have an idea, let's try this.
And I'm going to toss out there, because I know we only have a minute left, but for anyone who has that desire to throw it out there, man, work on your executives and try and get that executive buy-in, because you're going to have that, and make sure that you get that executive buy-in to make it happen.
So I will wind up my contribution saying what Karen and Anne said. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for your support.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, that was beautiful. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for joining. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye, everyone.
Bye.